For 2 days, unbelievable stories have emerged of a White House in chaos. A few stories here, a few stories there, as excerpts were released from a new book on Donald Trump's first year in the White House.
But tonight, the full book has been released, and the author's complete portrait of the president has been revealed. His claim Donald Trump never really wanted the job, and now that he has it, can't handle it.
Moments ago, Mr. Trump lashed out at the book on Twitter.
Yeah, the president posted Michael Wolff is a total loser who made up stories in order to sell this really boring and untruthful book. He used Sloppy Steve Bannon, who cried when he got fired and begged for his job. Now Sloppy Steve has been dumped like a dog by almost everyone. Too bad.
KCAL 9 political reporter Bryan joins us now with more on the author, what he has to say, and his reaction to all of this, the public reaction,
as we just heard, plenty of name calling here, right? And big book sales. That's the other part of this. In many big bookstores, customers are lined up and waiting to get their hands on Fire and Fury Inside the Trump White House, the new book that has set off new controversy about President Trump, Steve Bannon, and about the author of the book, Michael Wolff. A whirlwind of finger pointing and name calling and new doubts about the president.
Mr. President, have you read the book Fire and Fury?
Even as the president walked away from questions about the book billed as Inside the Trump White House, the heat continues to rise, and so do the book sales. New Year's and Christmas all rolled into one for teetering bookstores around the country.
It blew up so quickly, and I think the level of freak out and response to everything, it's already pretty high these days.
The author of the controversial book, Michael Wolff, was not complaining about the book sales in an interview on the NBC Today show.
What I say is where do I send the box of chocolates?
You think he's helping you sell books?
Absolutely. I mean, and not only is he helping me sell books, but he's helping me prove the point of the book. I mean, this is extraordinary that a president of the United States would try to stop the publication of a book. This doesn't happen, has not happened from other presidents.
The point of the book is that the Trump White House is in chaos, and those around the president are fearful about his mental fitness for the job.
According to your reporting, everyone around the president, senior advisors, family members, every single one of them questions his intelligence and fitness for office.
Let me put a marker in the sand here. 100% of the people around him.
Case in point, former Deputy White House Chief of Staff Katie Walsh was quoted in the book as saying that 6 weeks into the term, President Trump's son-in-law and one of his chief advisors, Jared Kushner, still could not name the administration's top 3 priorities. Working with the president, she was quoted as saying, was like trying to figure out what a child wants, end quote. Walsh later denied she ever said that. California Congressman John Garamendi, the former lieutenant governor, says he hears it every day from his constituents.
In my own district, people are asking me, what in the hell is going on in Washington? What is that president going to do? Can you explain this? Yeah, I can explain it. We got a guy in the White House that is unstable and not fit for office.
Claremont McKenna College political science professor Jack Pitney says the book will add more fuel to that fire, quoting segments in the book like this about President Trump.
There's a story that one advisor tried to talk him through the Constitution and couldn't get past the Fourth Amendment. So while this isn't necessarily a game changer, it really adds to the growing suspicions about President Trump's abilities.
But Wolff in his book did not get a free pass. The White House and Trump loyalists fired back.
This is just like so absurd. It's so ridiculous. So 100%, I'm around the president. I've been around him quite a bit through the past year. I met him 20 years ago. He is not psychologically unfit. He's not lost it, as he claimed.
I've never questioned his mental fitness. I have no reason to question his mental fitness.
Regardless of whether or not there's a lawsuit, they should be concerned about peddling fake stories. They should be concerned about putting out information that's not true.
The two sides couldn't even agree on whether President Trump did an interview with Wolff. The press secretary says it never happened. Wolff insists it absolutely did.
I have recordings, I have notes. I am certainly and absolutely in every way comfortable with everything I've reported in this book. My credibility is being questioned by a man who has less credibility than perhaps anyone who has ever walked on earth at this point. I will quote Steve Bannon, he's lost it.
Professor Pitney says if Wolf has evidence to back up his quotes and information, it could further bolster the credibility of the book.
Purportedly, he has over 200 hours of tapes, and if someone denies a quotation, he has the ability to make those tapes public. So I think in the end, the broad picture is going to be confirmed even as individual details come under question.
Now, talk about book sales. In one day, Fire and Fury is already the #1 bestseller on Amazon and Barnes & Noble's lists. Some online sellers say the demand for the book was so overwhelming today that it could take 2 to 4 weeks to ship all the orders already. And Barnes & Noble tonight is listing the book as being temporarily out of stock. Jeff, Lena, back to you.